I still remember the day I found out my husband was leaving me for another woman. My ears rang as I listened to the awful words that fell from his mouth. He stood in the living room with a cold look on his face. His voice was calm, yet every sentence he spoke cut deeper than any knife. I clutched at my dress, feeling my eyes burn with tears as he called me fat and ugly. He said he had tried to love me, but he could not pretend any longer. He said he was tired of looking at me and feeling disgusted. My tears would not stop, and I thought I would collapse from the pain. His words still echo in my head. I want to be with someone better, someone who actually takes care of herself. That was the moment I realized he was not just upset with me. He was done. He had chosen his mistress, and he wanted me out of his life. That was the beginning of my nightmare. It all started when our marriage began to fall apart, though I did not notice it at first. I had been happy in our early years. We moved into a small apartment, and I remember how we would argue over the color of the curtains or who would do the dishes. Those arguments seemed so silly now, but back then, they were signs of our normal, loving life. I remember how he would walk behind me while I cooked dinner, put his arms around my waist, and kiss my cheek. For the first few years, that was what our life was like, simple, warm, and full of small pleasures. Over time, our routine changed. We both became busier at work. I put on some weight, but it did not bother me too much. I knew I was not as slim as before, but I thought it was just a phase. I was focused on trying to build a stable future for us. We talked less and slept further apart in our bed. At first, I thought we were just exhausted from our jobs. I never imagined there was another woman involved. I believed he would talk to me if something was wrong. I started noticing little clues. He arrived home later than usual, saying he had work meetings or office dinners. Sometimes I would wake up at night and find his side of the bed empty. I thought it was stress from work, and I tried to be understanding. I never confronted him directly because I trusted him. I loved him. I assumed he would never want to hurt me. One evening, I found a lipstick-stained napkin tucked between the seats in his car. It was a bold shade of red that I never wore. I felt my heart skip a beat as I realized he was likely spending time with someone else. My stomach churned and my body went cold, but I kept telling myself I might be overthinking it. I convinced myself that maybe a coworker borrowed his car or it was an old napkin that had been left behind somehow. In my mind, there had to be some logical explanation. That night, I stayed up waiting for him. He came home around midnight, smelling of expensive perfume that was not mine. My mind screamed with suspicion. I wanted to ask him about the napkin. I wanted to ask him about the perfume. But his face was tired, and I did not want another fight. In the past, whenever I tried to ask questions, he acted annoyed. He would blame his mood on work and say I was nagging. I never wanted him to see me as a nuisance, so I kept quiet. Days turned into weeks, and my doubts grew stronger. The tension between us got worse. He noticed my nervousness, my desire to check his phone or question his late nights. Instead of giving me comfort, he grew distant. When we were in the same room, it felt like there was a wall of ice between us. He stopped touching me gently as he used to. He stopped saying, "I love you." I felt like I was clinging to a man who was already miles away from me. The day I discovered his affair, for certain, was a cold Monday afternoon. I had finished work early and decided to pick up groceries before going home. I passed by a small cafe and saw him through the window, sitting at a table with a woman I did not recognize. She was slim, wearing a tailored dress that showed off her perfect figure. Her hair was stylish, and she had bright red lipstick on, likely the same shade I had found on that napkin. I stood there frozen as I watched them hold hands across the table. They laughed together, and he leaned in to whisper something in her ear. She smiled, and he kissed her cheek. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt tears sting my eyes. I turned away, stumbling down the street, wondering how I had missed all the signs. My mind was racing. Should I walk in there and confront them? Should I scream at him and call him out for his betrayal? In the end, I simply went home. I do not know how I drove back without crashing my car. My tears blurred everything around me. He arrived home late that night, but I was prepared. My chest felt tight, but I tried to keep my composure. I confronted him. His face went pale. He did not deny it. Instead, he simply said, "I'm done with this marriage." When he looked at me, I saw no warmth. He said he was tired of having a wife who let herself go. He said he was tired of looking at me. The words spilled from him with a disturbing calmness. It was as though he had wanted to say them for a long time. He told me I was fat and unattractive, and that he had fallen in love with someone else. Those words battered my heart. I felt like the ugliest person in the world. He said he no longer cared if I cried or got upset. He packed a suitcase and walked out that very night. For weeks, I was in deep pain. I barely ate. I lay in bed feeling worthless. Every day felt like a punishment. The only thing that forced me out of bed was the need to keep my job. During those dark times, I thought about our past, wondering if any of it had been real. I blamed myself for my weight, my looks, and for not keeping his interest. I forgot my own worth. Friends tried to comfort me. Some told me I was better off without him. Others said I should focus on healing and not blame myself. But my husband's hateful words still clung to my mind. I wanted to tear them out, but it seemed impossible. At my lowest point, I remembered how I used to enjoy walking in the park and reading. I realized that I had stopped doing all the simple things that made me happy. I had lost myself in trying to be the perfect wife. I realized I had neglected my own needs and self-care. So I decided to start a change, not to win him back, but to find myself again. I began taking a short walk after work. I liked feeling the wind against my face. Even if I could not walk fast at first, I tried my best. My legs felt heavy, and my body felt slow, but I set small goals for myself. I refused to let his words be my truth. I also began meeting a counselor. It was not easy to open up about the humiliation and heartbreak, but slowly, I learned coping strategies. I learned how to respond to negative thoughts with simple facts. I am worthy of love. I am capable of healing. Step by step, I started regaining my self-esteem. Time passed, and the legal side of the divorce was handled. Our friends and family had varied reactions. Some of his family members apologized for his actions. My own family surrounded me with love. There were days when I felt I could never be happy again, but I kept pushing. I explored hobbies I had once loved. I began painting again. When my anxiety got too high, I would paint for hours, creating colorful shapes on the canvas. It gave me a sense of release. One afternoon, while browsing in a local bookstore, I bumped into an old college friend, Sasha. We had not seen each other in years. She gave me a big hug and asked how I was doing. Something about her warm smile made me feel safe. I confessed I was going through a divorce. She looked at me with understanding. Over coffee, I told her about my husband's cruel words and how he left me for another woman. She did not judge me or pity me. She simply listened and told me I did not deserve that kind of treatment. Her support felt like a bright spot in my gloomy world. Sasha invited me to join a weekend art workshop she was organizing. At first, I hesitated, feeling shy about meeting new people. But I remembered my promise to myself. I was going to find joy again. I went to the workshop, and I had a good time. I realized how much I enjoyed letting my imagination take over. I also discovered that there were others there who had endured heartbreak or personal struggles. Over shared laughter and conversation, I made new friends who accepted me just as I was. They did not see me as ugly or fat. They saw me as a person with a kind heart. Slowly, I began losing weight, not because I hated my body, but because I wanted to care for it. I exercised regularly, ate healthier foods, and found new energy. I felt my self-confidence grow. I let my hair down instead of hiding it in a tight bun. I wore clothes that fit my body better, making me feel comfortable and stylish. I was learning to love myself again. Even though I had scars in my heart, I learned that my worth was not defined by my ex-husband's hurtful words. Months went by, and then one day I received an unexpected message from him. He wrote me an email saying he needed to talk to me about some financial details tied to our divorce. My hands trembled as I read his name on my phone. Memories flooded back. I had not seen him since he walked out. We had handled most of our matters through lawyers, so his direct contact was surprising. I felt an urge to ignore him, but I decided it was best to address whatever issue he wanted to discuss. We met at a neutral place, a cafe near the law office. The moment he walked in, I felt a wave of anxiety, but I reminded myself to stand tall and remain calm. My self-respect was stronger than before. He seemed a bit taken aback when he saw me. I suppose he did not expect to see me looking healthier and more confident. He stumbled through his words, trying to focus on the financial matters. He seemed to keep glancing at me, almost like he was trying to figure out how I had changed. After we resolved the main topic, he sighed and asked if we could talk as friends. I did not know if I could trust him, but I nodded for him to continue. He told me he was planning to get married soon, to the woman he left me for. My heart pounded at the mention of her name. I did my best not to show any emotion. He asked if I would sign a paper that would speed up the final divorce settlement. He also tried to apologize for the way he ended things. But his apology was weak. It was more about easing his own guilt than making amends. A part of me felt a flash of anger, remembering how he humiliated me. Yet I remained calm. I agreed to sign the paper, as it was the last step in letting him go completely. In the days that followed, I heard through mutual friends that he was throwing a grand wedding. He wanted everything to be perfect, as if to showcase his new trophy wife. There were rumors that his mistress, now fiancée, was extremely demanding and had a taste for lavish things. I tried not to dwell on it. I did not want to let him distract me from my new life. I focused on my new friendships, my job, and my art. Each day, I grew stronger. Then one morning, Sasha called me. She had heard some news about my ex-husband's upcoming wedding. Apparently, there were problems with the venue. The lavish hotel they had booked was undergoing unexpected repairs, and the couple was scrambling to find a new location at the last minute. Sasha told me that some of the guests, including important business clients of my ex-husband, were annoyed by the sudden changes. There was talk that the wedding might be postponed or even canceled if they could not find a suitable place and time. I felt a strange sense of relief that his plans were falling apart, but I also wondered if I should feel guilty for finding comfort in someone else's misfortune. I had not wished him any harm, but I remembered how he had shamed and abandoned me. I reminded myself that I had done nothing wrong. A few days later, Sasha called me again, sounding breathless with gossip. She said that the bride had thrown a fit when she realized the dress she ordered was not ready. The designer refused to rush because the bride had demanded too many last-minute changes. On top of that, my ex-husband was short on money to fund the over-the-top reception. He had hoped to get financial help from some family members, but they refused because they did not approve of how he had treated me. Hearing all these setbacks, I could not help but wonder if karma was real. I tried not to fixate on it, but the curiosity was there. On the weekend of the wedding, I spent my Saturday morning painting. I put on music and began creating something bright and abstract. My phone buzzed with messages from people who knew my ex. They sent me pictures and updates like they were reporting live from a scene. They told me it was chaos at the wedding venue. The bride's makeup artist was late. Some of the flowers were not delivered on time. The guests were waiting, restless and annoyed. My ex-husband looked stressed and sweaty, trying to fix one problem after another. Then came the biggest shock of all. The bride's ex-boyfriend showed up uninvited. He caused a scene, demanding to speak to her. Security tried to escort him out, but he shouted that she had scammed him out of money. Suddenly, there was a huge argument in front of everyone. People began to whisper. The bride screamed at him to leave, claiming he was a liar. But some of the guests remembered gossip about her past. It was not her first time jumping from one partner to another, often for financial gain. Before long, the wedding guests were talking in hushed tones, pointing and shaking their heads. As if that were not enough, right before the vows, one of the business clients stood up and said he was withdrawing his investment from my ex-husband's new company. He had found out that my ex-husband lied about his finances. The man was furious, that he had come all this way for a wedding that was so poorly organized. It was a public humiliation. My ex-husband tried to laugh it off, but his panic was clear. Witnesses later told me that the bride was furious. She threatened to call the wedding off if my ex could not fix things. She told him, loud enough for everyone to hear, that she did not want to marry a failure. Guests gasped. My ex-husband stood there, stunned, as she stomped off in her expensive heels. By the end of the day, the wedding became a complete disaster. The ceremony was delayed for hours. Guests complained about the lack of proper food and air conditioning. Many left early, mumbling that it was a joke of a wedding. My ex-husband finally convinced the bride to go through with the vows by promising her more money and a better honeymoon destination. But the mood was ruined. Their pictures showed 4 smiles. Their first dance was performed in front of empty tables. Some of their family members were deeply embarrassed. The entire celebration was overshadowed by drama and chaos. When I heard about all of this, I felt a strange mixture of surprise, pity, and relief. For so long, I had felt like I was the problem, like I was the one who was not good enough. But watching his new wedding fall apart showed me something important. People who treat others with cruelty often bring trouble onto themselves. I did not have to do a single thing. Life had a way of revealing the truth about people's choices. It was almost as if the universe was reminding him of the pain he caused me. A few weeks later, I ran into him again by chance. I was at a local gallery admiring some sculptures when I spotted him. He looked unhappy and older than before. Stress lined his face. When he saw me, he stared for a moment. I could tell he wanted to speak, so I gave a small nod. He walked over and tried to put on a friendly smile. "Hi," he said. "I heard you've been doing well." I nodded, trying to remain neutral. I did not owe him any warmth. He seemed lost for words, like he was not sure how to approach me anymore. Finally, he said, "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for everything. My wedding, it was a mess." I looked at him. I remembered the day he sneered at me and said I was fat and ugly. I remembered how I felt like nothing. Now he stood before me, looking like the broken one. I took a deep breath. "I hope you can learn from your mistakes," I said simply. I felt no urge to hurt him. I realized that I had moved beyond that pain. He seemed to wait for me to say more, but I did not. I turned and walked away. I heard him call my name, but I kept going. In my heart, I felt free. A weight I had carried for so long was lifted. I did not need his approval. I did not need his apology to validate my worth. I had found my own path. Life carried on. I continued painting, met new people, and started forming deeper friendships. In time, I allowed myself to date again, though I was cautious. I wanted to be sure I had healed enough to open my heart to someone else. Through a friend, I met a gentle man named Aaron. He was kind and supportive, and he made me laugh. He never once commented on my body in a cruel way. If anything, he praised my determination to stay healthy and follow my passions. The first few times Aaron and I went out, I was terrified of being judged. My ex-husband's words still lingered somewhere in the back of my mind. But Aaron saw me for who I was. He listened when I spoke about my fears. He told me I was beautiful in ways that went beyond my appearance. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely appreciated. He never tried to rush me into anything. He respected my boundaries. As the months passed, Aaron and I grew closer. We shared stories about our past, our dreams, and even our failures. He supported my art. He showed up to see my paintings displayed at local events. His belief in me made me believe in myself even more. I felt a warmth in my heart I thought I had lost forever. Eventually, I invited him to meet my parents. They liked him right away, charmed by his honest nature and sense of humor. It felt surreal to have someone in my life who did not see my flaws as problems, but rather as part of who I was. With Aaron, I never had to pretend. When he learned about my divorce, he simply held my hand and said, "You deserve real happiness." And I realized he was right. Time healed my wounds. I learned to look at my reflection and smile at myself, no longer hearing my ex-husband's cruel words. I was not ugly. I was not unworthy. I was a person who had been hurt but had found the courage to stand up again. I had turned my life around in ways I never thought possible when I was crying in the dark. I later heard my ex-husband's new marriage was filled with arguments about money and lifestyle. Some nights, I felt a pang of pity for him. But mostly, I felt relief that I was no longer stuck with someone who made me feel so small. I knew that no matter how much I weighed or how I looked, I had the right to be loved for who I was. One evening, while having dinner with Aaron, he mentioned how much he admired my strength. I blushed, not used to such compliments. He reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "I love you." My heart fluttered. Tears welled up in my eyes, not from sadness, but from the joy of feeling accepted, flaws and all. In that moment, I understood that life really can move on after heartbreak. It is possible to rebuild, to find love again, and to let go of past pain. In the months that followed, Aaron and I took things at our own pace, enjoying small adventures like exploring art museums, going for hikes, and sometimes just staying at home watching movies. There was a calm comfort between us. I never felt rushed or forced. We both cared about nurturing our relationship one day at a time. We communicated openly about any worries or insecurities. That trust between us felt new and precious. A year later, on a warm Sunday afternoon, Aaron planned a small gathering at the park with some of our friends. We enjoyed a picnic under a large oak tree. After we ate, he stood up and asked for everyone's attention. My heart raced as I saw him turn to me and smile. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Right then, under that big tree, in front of our close friends, he proposed. Tears ran down my face as I said yes. I could not believe that I, once deemed fat and ugly by a man who had broken my spirit, was now standing next to someone who saw me as a treasure. When I think about my journey, I see how far I have come. I will never forget the pain my ex-husband caused me. But I will also never forget how I found the strength within myself to move forward. I learned that happiness does not come from trying to meet someone else's shallow standards. It comes from embracing who you are and finding people who cherish you for that. My ex-husband's wedding turned into a nightmare of his own making, but my life blossomed into something beautiful and real. Even after my proposal, I did not rush into wedding plans. I wanted to take time and savor the good things in my life. I spent my days working on new painting techniques, meeting with friends, and sharing laughs with Aaron. My weight was no longer something I measured for external validation. I kept a healthy routine because I loved my body as it was. I had found a healthy rhythm. Eventually, we held our own small wedding ceremony. It was simple, with just close friends and family. The decorations were handmade by me and Sasha. We had homemade food that everyone helped prepare. There were no big business clients, no fancy stage, no grand illusions of wealth. And yet, the love we felt that day was real and deep. There was laughter, tears of joy, and a warmth that I had not known before. When I said my vows to Aaron, I knew I was not just saying words. I was giving my heart to someone who truly deserved it. In return, he gave me his. That day, I realized that a happy ending is not about everything being perfect. It is about finding peace with who you are and sharing that life with someone who respects and loves you. I used to think my ex-husband was the measure of my worth, that if he found me undesirable, then I was undeserving of love. But through the turmoil, I discovered that my worth is not determined by someone else's shallow judgment. I learned that real love does not shame or belittle. It uplifts and supports. So, yes, there is justice in the fact that my ex-husband's wedding turned out to be a nightmare. But more importantly, there is a deep satisfaction in knowing that I did not have to become bitter or hateful. I healed. I grew. I found genuine happiness. And in the end, that is the best ending I could have ever hoped for.